Welcome to the Bible and Theology Matters podcast,
where we discuss all things Bible and theology.
Because it matters. What you really believe determines how you really behave.
Now, here is your host, Associate Professor of Bible Exposition at Dallas Theological Seminary
and Professor of Bible and Theology for the National Theological College and Graduate School,
Dr. Paul Weaver.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it is that you are watching or listening to this podcast. I'm Paul Weaver, your host, and today we're having a conversation. I love to have conversations with different Bible scholars and Bible expositors about all things Bible and theology. And today, I'm excited to talk about a book here, One Body, One Spirit, subtitled Disability and Community in the Church. And today I have with me the co-authors of this book, and I'd love to introduce them to you. My first guest is Jason Epps. Jason is a graduate of Dallas Theological Seminary, pretty good seminary.
Yeah.
Where I have the privilege of teaching. He earned his Master of Theology. He's currently a PhD student of Old Testament at Midwestern Baptist Theological Seminary, where he also serves as an adjunct instructor. Jason has lived with cerebral palsy his entire life and is the creator of the 5-Step Plan, which is the inspiration for this book. Jason, welcome to the Bible and Theology Matters podcast.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here.
And my second guest is Dr. Paul Pettit. Dr. Pettit is the Director of Career Services here at Dallas Theological Seminary. He's also an adjunct professor in pastoral ministries, media arts and worship, and educational ministries and leadership. He's also the founder and president of Dynamic Dads, an organization offering encouragement to fathers. Dr. Pettit is the author of several other books, including Dynamic Dads and Christ-Centered Masculinity. He's also the co-author of Blessed Are the Balanced. Dr. Pettit has served as a guest host on the Bible and Theology Matters podcast. So, Dr. Pettit, welcome back to the Bible and Theology Matters podcast.
Thanks, Dr. Weaver. Great to be here with you and Jason.
So, obviously, those who are watching, we have Jason joining us virtually, and Dr. Paul Pettit is with me here in my home studio. And so we're looking forward to dialoguing about this wonderful book. Jason, would you start us out by sharing with our viewing and listening audience some of the challenges that you have faced throughout your life?
As we talk about in the book, there are two main barriers, physical and social, and I've experienced them my entire life. On the physical side, it's things that you would think of. Lack of access, steps, doorways, curves, things that would prevent me from going places or physically being in a space, church, what have you. So many buildings, especially churches, are physically inaccessible. And, you know, people could think, oh, it's just a tiny step. It might as well be a mountain. So it doesn't matter how big it is, it's still a barrier that can be overcome. And as we talk about in the book, there are ways to overcome that, and it's not nearly as insurmountable as people might think. The sadder area where I've faced a lot of challenges is on the more social barriers. Especially when I was younger, I was very much excluded from my peers, basically treated as invisible, as a burden and a limitation on their fun. One, I couldn't join in a lot of the games that they were playing, and two, when I would try and make suggestions, they would begrudgingly do it. So I've just naturally because I was constantly rebuffed and treated like I was in the way, I would just withdraw myself. There's been several times when I was in churches where I was just talking to someone and I was constantly told, you're in the way, you're in the way, you're in the way. And yet I saw everybody else doing the same thing, clustering up and being in the way, and nobody ever spoke to them. So what's the deal here? You know, if it's an issue of physical access, why isn't there equity here? But I can get into more specifics if you want, but
Well, we're certainly going to talk more about some of these issues struggles you've had to face as you've tried to be useful and serve in your local church and in ministries and seminaries, and studying all of these things bring unique challenges, don't they? Mm-hmm. Well, Dr. Pettit, would you tell us about your relationship with Jason and the story that how this book came together?
Yeah, Jason rolled into my preaching class. So I teach homiletics at Dallas Theological Seminary, and everyone was there except one person, and I looked on the roster and saw Jason Epps and heard this tap on the door, and I said, "Is someone at the door? I think that must be Jason." And a guy went back and opened the door, because on the second floor of Todd Building at the Dallas Seminary, we have these huge wooden doors. And
you're not exaggerating. These are huge
wooden,
these are heavy
doors. And Jason was there in his power chair, and I felt so bad. I was like, "Oh, come on in, man, come in." But that semester, Dr. Weaver, as it went along, I began to see the whole school through his eyes. At the front of the room, at the homiletics room, we have a stage. So immediately I'm thinking, how's Jason going to get up on stage? We pulled up the pulpit, and it was, way over his head. And just began to walk with Jason back to the Washington dorm, began to walk through campus with him at times. And, he knew every door on campus that worked and every door on campus that didn't work. He knew the places that were accessible and the places that were inaccessible. But more than that, we built a friendship, and that's what's been the best part, is an organic friendship where I've learned so much about disability. And at the first class, I always say, "Does anybody in here want to write a book?" And there's always one or two that sheepishly raise their hand. But Jason said, "I have a 5-step plan. I want to write a book. I've already written parts of the rough draft." So I knew when I heard how far along he was, and I could tell by his motivation, that we were going to write a book together, and it's been a blessing.
Very good. Well, short side note, this man is so old, he was my professor too. So
That's right.
Just kidding. He was working on his doctorate, and I was working on my THM.
Yeah, we go way back.
So, Jason, while this book is certainly helpful to those who are called to minister to those with disabilities, this book has a much broader audience in mind. Would you explain?
Yeah. So really, and we love people that are involved with disability ministry. They're great people. But the difficulty is, it's like preaching to the choir. They know it. They already have this mindset. One of the main goals of this book is to give people with no exposure, no experience with people with disabilities, the exposure to that so that they can begin to have the mindset. Because in my experience, and in the experience of everybody that we interviewed, the people that are the most understanding, the most willing to work, are the people that have had the exposure, that have begun to think of in this mindset. So our primary audience is pastors, Christian leaders, administrators, so that idea can trickle down and affect the church organically.
So what I'm hearing from you is that this is really a mindset and really a book that's going to help educate myself and others that really need to be more aware of the needs of those with disabilities.
Yeah.
Well, we do hope that many will read this and will put into action these 5 steps that you've suggested. But as we think of disabilities and people with disabilities, naturally we think of physical barriers. So we're going to talk about 2, right? Physical barriers and then social barriers. But we've mentioned a little bit already with the heavy door and that story of how you met Dr. Pettit first. But would you tell us a little bit more of the physical barriers that you face?
So one of the big ones that I constantly face are stages. Like Paul was alluding to, we've got the stage in preaching classes, the stages in churches, choir lofts. The Moody Church has a choir loft that has the stairs that would put a ziggurat to shame. So, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Ziggurat.
An Old Testament reference there.
Yes, for our listeners who aren't familiar with.
Lot of stairs. Big ancient period pyramid. Sorry. But the the other thing is like curves, steps, potholes, sometimes even like the degree of doorways, heights of tables. That's another thing that could be an issue. Just visit. Sometimes it's just stuff that's in the way, like nondescript stuff. Like if you may have an accessible entrance, but if it's blocked, like for instance, when I was at Moody, the school was doing a play on people with disabilities, and there was one accessible entrance. Ironically, they blocked it with the stage props and such, and I'm like, come on, guys, you're doing a play on disabilities, and yet you block the accessible entrance to the stage, which a friend of mine had to be carried in by a friend of hers into her survey class.
And I appreciate the humor with which you approach life and these situations, because I remember one interview you've had recently, I think that same story, but you alluded to being treated like the Ark of the Covenant to get up into the choir loft, right? Is that what you said, right. I think?
Yeah. Sometimes, getting carried along like the Ark of Covenant, it can get to your head. You think, hey, I want to travel like this all the time.
Yeah, it really did. This is cool.
Paul, you shared a story, I think, a couple stories that you experienced in your relationship with Jason.
Yeah. Just seeing the whole campus through his eyes. I remember one time we were down at the end of the sidewalk, and he's on the grass, right on the edge of the sidewalk in the grass, and the sprinklers come on. And for me, I just jump out of the way and run off, and Jason's starting to get wet, and I'm like, man, does this happen? He says, oh, it happens occasionally. And then he's telling me about getting on a bus. In my mind, I'm like, why don't you just get on the Dallas area rapid transit? And he says, well, it might say 110, but oftentimes they never show up at 110. Or it might say 110, but do they have room for my power chair? So in one of our 5 steps, we talk about advocating, which is, let's say I wanted to take Jason to a Dallas Cowboys game. Actually, check that. Let's say I wanted to take Jason to a winning football team. Let's say I wanted to take Jason to the Kansas City Chiefs game. I'd have to go ahead of time. I mean, how does he get into the stadium? Where do we park? How does he get up all the rows of steps? Is there handicap accessible, disability accessible? So this friendship, this organic friendship really works well because what we call the handler, Jason got to choose the terms, by the way. He's the asset, and I'm the handler. I thought I should be the asset, but he feels like the person with a disability should be the asset, and I'm the handler. I go before him, prepare a way for him almost. Like, hey, there's going to be a party. Okay, hey, could I run out to your house tomorrow afternoon? Why? Well, I just want to check your front entrance. I want to check the space where we'll be meeting. My buddy Jason's coming, and I want to make sure we'll be able to, because there's nothing worse than maybe he gets a ride all the way out here, and then I realize, wow, he can't even come in the front door, or he can't even come down the hallway. So this friendship, this organic friendship that we're promoting, we're asking people to take our disability challenge, take this friendship challenge and say, is there someone that I could become friends with and be their advocate?
I hate mentioning this because I love Dallas Seminary, but when I took the Capstone Preaching, okay, they, and this gets into, it was a mountain, a small step would be a mountain. In the preaching labs where they have the Capstone Preaching, they didn't used to have a stage. They added, right before I started Capstone Preaching, a minor, 2-inch lip to get up. It was added. And nobody, and I'm friends with the administration, buddies with, pretty much anyone you can think of. And it's could we think, I understood the purpose. They wanted to give people the experience of speaking on stages. But Could they have thought of like doing it at a slope? There are minor things that you could do when you're building to make it accessible. I was able to get on it because we were able to find a block of wood, but what if I didn't have that? And since it was newly built, it could have been done in a way that would have been better. So
we will blame that on Reg Grant for his, no, I'm going to cut that out, but probably. No, for his dramatic skills, wanting to have a stage. He's very skilled in that,
though,
but
just
not
a
thinking.
Small barrier like that for you and I, we just jump up on stage. But for a person like Jason or someone on crutches, you really want to think through ahead of time what's accessible, what's not. And again, as Jason said, we're not talking about people tearing down their old church and building a brand new ADA compatible. Jason has taught me it's more of a mindset. It's more of, are there friends that will help me overcome these barriers? So the mindset and the friendships are just as powerful as trying to make a perfect ADA compatible church.
But you're right. 2 inches, that's nothing to us, but it's a huge difference for you, isn't it?
Yeah. And the other thing that kind of dovetails into that is don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. It's like with the entire steps and with everything, start somewhere. And you're going to make mistakes. I can't tell you how many times when Paul and I were having the initial discussion, he would make so many mistakes, and that's fine. It's better to engage and be making those mistakes. We were starved for any sort of interaction. So what if you fumble? So what if you don't use person first language? Say or ask the kid blunt question of, so why are you in the chair? Which, by the way, personally, I love when kids ask that question because everybody's thinking it. The key is an honest conversation. Talk to them like you would talk to anybody else.
So people are normally probably afraid to offend you or offend others that have disabilities, and so they just say nothing, right?
Yeah.
That's why I can imagine myself. But we need to engage and interact and be educated, right?
Yeah, a couple of examples. If I give Jason a ride to church, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, great, I've just signed up for the rest of the year. Every Sunday morning, I'm going to be taking Jason to church. Or when I want to help Jason into the van, I'm afraid, am I touching him in the wrong area? Am I going to harm him? And in both instances, Jason just stepped back and made it organic and made it real and said, hey, I might be able to give you a ride to church this Sunday, but I don't know if I'll be able to keep doing this every Sunday. That's normal. Or with loading into the van, he might say, hey, do you need help getting into the van? And for me, that was such a breakthrough because I was thinking, oh, great, now I'm going to have to pick him up, and I don't know if I'm holding him correctly or lifting him correctly. And he says, why don't you just start with, hey, do you need assistance getting into the van? Or what's the best way to help you get into the van?
Yeah. So
it just broke it down and made it so much more real.
The ideal situation is the entire church's mindset. They can all pitch in. So it's really the entire body helping out, which was actually how I was finally able to be baptized. For a long time I was afraid, to be honest, of being baptized because it's like, how are we going to have it? Like, there's a million things, and I was at a church at the time where I was like, okay, like these people have proven themselves. I think we can
trust them.
I talked to the pastor, and he's like, we're gonna do it. I don't know how we're going to do it. We're going to do it. So what they did was they had all the guys in the church lift me up and dunk me, which is a really meaningful thing because it kind of exemplified that we're all in this together.
Yeah. Just a point of clarification, is handler the right term to use? Is that appropriate, or is that your own term?
Oh, that was my own term. I remember when I was in my dorm at Moody and I was talking to one of my good friends, and I'm like, I feel like I am seen as a burden to the other guys because they were very sports guys. They like, the physicality of things. And he's like, yeah, you're right. Like, we see you as a burden. Most of the guys don't want you here. And this is at the premier Christian college of the nation. That's what strikes me. I expect the world to act this way.
Well, we won't tell everybody that that's Cedarville that you're talking about. I'm just teasing, but yeah, that is a shame.
It wasn't Cedarville, so
I know it wasn't. In just a moment, we'll return to our previously recorded interview. But first, our missions moment of the week. I'd like you to hear a brief testimony from one of my students from the country of Jordan. His name is Emil.
Hello, my name is Emil. I am a student at the National Theological College and Graduate School here in Jordan. I'm from Amman, the capital of Jordan, and I'm about to graduate this summer. I became a student of the NTCGS because when I was looking for theological training, NTCGS was reaching out to my church to recruit students and did not require me to travel for long to get training and the courses, so it was really convenient for me to be in the class. NTCGS has helped me organize my biblical knowledge and introduced me to many valuable resources and also encouraged me to tackle many theological issues I used to shy out from in the past. And all of this was done by professors and teachers who were also ministers of the word, ministering in many countries around the world.
If you'd like to learn more about NTCGS or how you can give to help students like Emil, attend the National Theological College and Graduate School in Jordan, Egypt, Lebanon, or East Africa, please visit ntcgs.org. That's ntcgs.org. Thank you for your consideration. Now back to our previously recorded program. So we've kind of bled into some of the issues relating to social as well. So the obvious barriers that we think through are physical, but the social ones are greater in many ways, aren't they?
Yeah, they totally are. And oftentimes it's what makes it greater is people don't even think about it. Like the first thing they think of, and the only thing that disability ministries really address, the good ones, are often people with disabilities have spent most of our lives isolated from everyone, which means we're basically a missionary kid, a third culture kid, which have very little knowledge of how to get into and insert ourselves in larger groups. To this day, I really don't know how to do it. I'm fine talking to people one-on-one, but once it gets into a larger group, I'm not afraid of it. It's just I have trouble like interjecting myself. So it's like, because I don't want to run them over, Although I had a friend of mine that was like, if you want to get people's attention, just run them over. And I'm like, I can't do that.
They'll learn for next time.
Put it in first gear.
Yeah.
The other thing, Dr. Weaver, is sometimes the handlers were excluded, so we miss out on the benefit of getting to know someone with a disability or watching them use their gift. I know Jason has mentioned a couple times to me, I just wanted to teach. I wanted to teach a Sunday school class, or I wanted to write curriculum. And the leaders of the church were like, oh, you're disabled. You're Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. And he said, well, maybe I could teach. Maybe I could write curriculum. Oh, no. You need to go Tuesday nights at 7. You're disabled. So sometimes we just categorize people and don't get to know them as friends, and we miss out on the blessing. And sometimes Jason would ask me, hey, do you think a church would hire me as their senior pastor? And I had to really stop and say, I don't know. I just don't know. But sometimes we have that stigma too in our non-disability world, our temporarily able-bodied world. And we say, oh, do I want them on stage? What would the visitors think? Or do I want them teaching in my son or daughter's class? I want a non-disabled person. It's just ugly ableism, so to speak, that creeps in and says, I'm whole, I'm non-disabled, that person is disabled. I can help them. I can show them pity or grace, but I can't learn from them. I'm here to teach them. They're not here to teach me. And Jesus always went after those that were hurting. Jesus always shows grace to the suffering. Jesus spent so much time with people with disabilities as we did an Old Testament audit and then a New Testament audit, so much of the Bible is about God's heart for the suffering.
Yeah.
The other thing with churches, and Paul is absolutely right, but the other problem that I run into churches is they may not have directly said, oh, you belong on Tuesday nights, but churches have a pay your dues mentality. And a lot of the entry-level service positions are physical, which kind of make it impossible for me to even serve because they don't look at, well, this guy has been doing everything he can. My spiritual gift is teaching. I don't expect to be given like full-blown pulpit, if I come there, but at least allow me to teach, one-on-one or facilitate a small group under supervision and slowly give me more and more responsibility. So there needs to be more discipleship for everyone, because this isn't just a problem for people with disabilities, but I feel like it's more intense because we don't even have the option to do the pay your dues mentality for service.
Right. Well, this is a case in point, isn't it? This book that you've written with Dr. Pettit, One Body, One Spirit, subtitled Disability and Community in the Church. Right. You have so much to offer, and I'm glad that Dr. Pettit challenged you to do that, and you took him up on that offer. And now we have this wonderful book published by Kriegel on this subject. Well, real quickly, Paul, you used a statement there that we're both familiar with, but our listeners may not be. You spoke about temporarily abled bodies. Tell us about that title.
Yeah, when Jason and I were doing research for this book, we came across that phrase, temporarily able-bodied, and it threw me because I thought, what do you mean? Well, all of us are getting older, so when we're 80, 90 years old, by God's grace, if we live that long, we'll probably be using a cane or crutches or hearing aids or glasses. So all of us are probably in a degenerative state. That's the second law of thermodynamics.
After 24, it's all downhill, right?
Entropy, energy tends to dissipate. Or think about this. I could go out here on the street and get hit by a car and be disabled. I could have a stroke and be disabled. I could go into a military conflict and become disabled. So temporarily able-bodied is where we're all at, really. And so we need to get rid of that binary way of thinking. I'm able-bodied, he's disabled. Oh, she's very disabled. I'm not disabled at all. We're all living, breathing, serving by God's grace. And so we're all temporarily able-bodied, and we need to welcome anybody that has a disability, get to know them. We're asking our listeners today, our readers, to take the Disability Challenge. First of all, buy the book, One Body, One Spirit by Kriegel, and then find someone that has a disability and befriend them. It's organic. Just say, could I be your friend? Could I get to know you? Could we become friends? And as Jason has said, sometimes it might not work out. You move on to the next person. Sometimes we click, sometimes we don't, but it could be someone in your office, someone in your neighborhood, someone at your church or fellowship or parish. So it's been a great journey getting to know Jason, and we thank you for having us on your Bible and Theology Matters podcast.
Very good. Well, let's walk down through really quickly through your 5 steps. The first step, Jason, you developed a 5-step plan, building genuine friendships with those who have disabilities. We're going to walk through those one by one. The first step is notice. Tell us about notice.
So notice is very simple. The handler comes in and notices the area, notices if there's anybody with disability, if they're isolated and separated, just notices their environment.
And then the second step is engage.
Engage is after you've noticed the person, you actually go up to them and very simply say, like if they're in the lunchroom, can I sit here? It's very, in the engage step, questions are key. Asking the person their likes, their dislikes, even asking them about their disability.
Third one, research, right? Tell us.
So research, Paul briefly talked about this before. There's 2 types of research, passive and active. Passive, the handler goes about the regular environment, noticing what areas and what places would be accessible and what places wouldn't be. Active research is, for instance, like he was saying about the Kansas City Chiefs game. If he knows that I love the Kansas City Chiefs, Paul would go and check every location.
Incorporating that research, right?
So incorporate is one of the hardest steps to do, to be honest, and it requires all the others. So incorporate is when the handler goes to the larger group, whether it be a youth group, the church, the men's group, what have you, whatever their social circle, and says, hey guys, we have Jason here. He likes to do X. Would you guys want to do it?
Dr. Pettit, what the fifth step in Jason's 5-step approach is advocating.
Yeah, the advocate goes back to the larger group, like the church leadership or the friendship group or the youth group leaders, and says, hey, what if we went to this event because I know my friend Jason would be able to participate? Or, hey, it looks like we're all going to go to the lake. Is there any way we could go to the lake and do something else so that some of our friends with disabilities could be able to participate?
I wish churches would, not put people in boxes and be willing to, actually, recognize and use people's gifts. Because I think about, what if there was another person like me?
Well, we have been walking through One Body, One Spirit, subtitled Disability and Community in the Church. As we wrap up our program together, Jason, any last thoughts you'd like to leave our listeners with and viewers?
Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Everybody starts somewhere. Just start. That's my final word. Thanks for having us on.
My pleasure.
Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's great to have you. Paul, Dr. Pettit, any last thoughts on your part?
Well, my disability is ADHD. I forgot the question. I'm sorry, that's just a little disability humor. I would say build that organic friendship. Notice someone that has a disability, and just go up to them and say, hey, tell me about your disability, or how's your day going, or is there any way I could help you today? And boy, that'll go such a long way.
Well, Jason, I do wish God's blessing on you as you continue your PhD studies there at Midwestern Baptist Theological Seminary. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Pettit, as well. Thank you for joining us for this podcast on One Body, One Spirit, Disability and Community in the Church. Our time is up for today's Bible and Theology Matters podcast, but we have only scratched the surface on Jason and Dr. Pettit's book, One Body, One Spirit, Disability and Community in the Church. You're sure to want to get your own copy. You can find it on Amazon.com or wherever else you buy your books. It's published by Kriegel Publishing.
And if people want to connect with me, I have a website, keepthinkingforlife.com.
Also, if you haven't already, please make sure you subscribe to this podcast on our YouTube channel, wherever you download your podcast, so that you can be informed when new episodes become available. And please leave us a 5-star review. That will help us become more accessible to those who are looking for faith-affirming programming. Also, did you know that we have a 6 to 10 minute video series entitled Faith Affirming Findings? In these videos, I describe and illustrate some of the most important discoveries from the field of biblical archaeology, discoveries that will affirm your faith in the historicity and reliability of Scripture, and provide unique insights to the background of the Bible. These videos will accompany my upcoming book by the same name, Faith Affirming Findings, also published by Kriegel Publishing. So I'm excited to affirm this book as well. You can find them on our YouTube channel. These videos, simply go to YouTube and in the search browser type Bible and Theology Matters, or go to BibleandTheologyMatters.com and click on the YouTube link. Well, I hope that you'll join us again next week for another great podcast. But until next time, never forget, Bible and Theology Matters, because what you really believe determines how you really behave.
Bible and Theology Matters podcast is a listener-supported podcast
devoted to helping Christians grow in their knowledge of the Word of God and in their relationship to the God of the Word.
To learn how you can partner with the Bible and Theology Matters podcast,
visit us at BibleandTheologyMatters.com. That's Bible, theologymatters.com.